Welcome back, everybody, to the Victory Road World Cup of Pokemon VGC, sponsored by Galto, Metafi, and GG Tour. I'm Connor Johnston, joining you again alongside Hayden McTavish, and we're here for a nice match of Canada versus India. And from looking at the players we have lined up, it looks like a very exciting match, Hayden.
Yeah, absolutely. We get not just one match, but two, and they're the first two, I believe, between India and Canada. And so it's really exciting. At the end of the stream, there will be a whole lot on the board now for whether one team is up by two or if they're both neck and neck for the last 5 games of that set. And I'm really excited to get to show the start of those matches and the beginning of the week for these two teams.
Yeah, it's been a good start to the week, and it's going to be a good way to push forward. Both of them are very strong teams. They've had history in previous World Cups and just Pokemon world in general. Of course, Canada is a lot more known than India. Of course, but India is really showing their skill. They came really far last year, and the fact they've repeated it this year shows that they're working hard, across their players, both in India and across the world, just to get that teamwork down, get what's best of them, and then get as far as they have twice. And, to thwart some of the best countries in the world, it's great to get along the way.
Yeah, India has been just such a terrifying country in this whole tournament. They've had so many incredible wins. I think they have an extraordinary win-loss ratio per set. And it's very exciting to see all of these incredible players that they have on their team facing off against the tried and true Canadian players. Both teams have done so well to get to this point, and we're sure to be in for some really exciting matches here.
Yeah, and as long as the match are exciting, probably got some excited teams to tie along. From what data we have, I believe we did see previously, just before, that Matt Tidd is going with a Calyrex Ice team, which I believe he did use earlier on in the World Cup. I think did attempt to use it at the World Championships, I think our notes said. So, a bit of a team that he knows well, and is thinking, did do so on the first couple matches, but maybe taking it to Worlds, taking it around all different tournaments, has made him rethink it, and here's a couple sets I can change, here's what I can do better. Karthik, I can't quite remember from our notes what he had, but you can always expect the best in India. A lot of hyper offense teams from there, and a lot of the usual remedy teams come from there. So maybe Matt Tiz can have a bit of his run for his money with both the skill of India and just the teams they could bring as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll get to those teams in a moment, both of them really exciting to showcase. But last thing we should mention on this particular slide, if you're thinking, oh, okay, Canada, India, I want to see the other matches too. We will be showing the US versus France with Emilio Forbes versus Hippolyte Bernard, which is going to be a spectacular game. Both of those players are so well known, have done well this season, and I'm really excited to see what they choose to bring to that particular match as well. So make sure you don't go away. After the Canada-India matches, make sure you stick around for all three of what we have left to show you, because that third one's going to be spectacular.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. And as we see from the Canada-India matchup on paper, not much has really gone down. There's a couple of results that have probably been submitted whilst the streams were going on, or maybe just before certain time to update it. But just look at all these names and the players they're putting forward to try and just guarantee those wins and get forward to that top 4 position, which is where the money starts to come in if you do finish in those positions. And, there's just names I recognize all across the board. Of course, we saw earlier Jean-Marc, Matt Tidd, Ryan Lassetto, just names that you'll see as household names in VGC, especially in those events in North America and possibly maybe internats if they do get to them. And of course, for India, they got just as strong players going up against them, so it's going to be a tough back and forth matches, I believe. Maybe a couple 2-1s, maybe a couple straight 2-0s, where the players can really get that push towards them and really think their opponents through.
Yeah, so much pressure riding on these first two players, Matt and Karthik, being able to try to set the tone for their whole week's matches. Like, nothing's happened yet, and suddenly there's going to be so much that rides on. Can you win convincingly? Can you win? Is it like a really tight win that you get? Is it a really impressive win where you show that your team is really capable? And so a whole lot is resting on these two players' shoulders. But they also have some spectacular accomplishments to show that they're going to be able to handle that. Matt Tidd, Milwaukee Regionals top 16 in 2022, a World Cup competitor last year, and Roanoke Regionals top 32 and North American Internationals top 64. It is not easy to get to top 64 in internationals, and also amazing to sort of have some veteran experience in the World Cup format. And facing off against Karthik, with the World Cup competitor from last year, the Victory Road Series 11 Challenge top 32. And also just both of these players have been playing regularly for their teams this year in the World Cup. And these teams have gotten to the top 8, largely because of how well these teams are able to work together and prepare for sets and play these sets. And so definitely excited to see these two players face off.
Yeah, it's going to be a very close game. As I've said throughout this history of the World Cup, it's not about what you've got on this screen. It's about what you can do, on these next couple of screens we see, the battles. You could have the hundreds of thousands of finishes in tournaments, but then someone could just rock up and be like, hey, I've got the heart in the game, I've got my mind in the game, and I can take that. So maybe Karthik can use that data and use that strength with less info and just, go down Matt Tid and show him, who deserves to have the win there. Of course, teams as well. I have just had a bit of a brain refresh of Karthik's team, which is the team that came top 4, I believe, at the last ever EU regionals in the one in Italy. I think it was the last one. And it was just such unusual because, we have the Kanto Slowbro coming in and taking its stage in Galar, or its Galarian cousin you would have thought would have taken the stage. And, it was just such a powerful team with such, weird sets that caught people off guard. Matt Tid's team, just a standard-ish Dialga Calyrex team. It's got Urshifu on there, who's come back a lot in the Spikemouth tournaments, which Victory Road might also have at some point, so keep an eye out for those. But, it's just going to be a standard, get Trick Room up and do things. Maybe you could see some, Electro Webs to make Dialga a bit faster, because sometimes that ought to be faster. So both players have Trick Room options and Speedy options, so they're not really flushed by any of the opponent's options they can go for.
Yeah, really interesting to see Trick Room compositions plus fast electric types. It might matter a lot which choice players have made for those two, like the Calyrex versus the Slowbro, the Thundurus versus that Regieleki. But then also the choice of Grass Poison type alongside that is going to be really influential. Karthik has this fast mode with the Groudon and the Venusaur, but also Venusaur is pretty bulky and can try to just slow down a Trick Room setup, except for that Calyrex. And so I'm curious if that winds up coming or if it ends up needing to just stay on the bench because of the Calyrex. Whereas that Amoonguss seems like it's in great position to do a lot of damage regardless, unless an electric terrain is set up.
Yeah, let's see how the electric terrain does go as we see Amoonguss and Calyrex are straight out Trick Room lead essentially in front of the Yveltal and the Slowbro. So one of those Pokemon really liking that Trick Room if it does go up. So Matt Tid gonna have to think a bit cautiously about that, because albeit Slowbro can't really hit these Pokemon very hard, it's going to be a bit annoying. And that's something that both players have to keep in mind. Of course, Slowbro, I believe the set might have carried Yawn. It's a very sleepy Pokemon. It might carry Yawn on some of its sets. And, Yveltal just does Yveltal things, so instantly threatening what could go down onto this Calyrex. And Amoonguss doesn't like those Flying-type moves either, which could be very scary if it does get hit by one.
Yeah, a lot of really interesting interactions here. This Calyrex is going to struggle to do damage to that Slowbro, but the Slowbro is going to struggle to do damage right back. We see Yveltal putting out a lot of pressure, but needing to pivot out, not wanting to take that Glacial Lance, just slowing down the Calyrex, and maybe putting itself in position to handle this Amoonguss if it happens to have safety goggles. Glacial Lance comes out. It's going to be one of the least impressive Glacial Lances we see all day, unless it gets a critical hit. It's into this really defensive Slowbro, and this Incineroar which resists it, and with that Intimidate off. And then Slowbro just getting off that Iron Defense, getting started on setting itself up to wall this team. It might have to take a sleep, but it might be able to last through a few turns with that sleep. As we do see Spore coming out, I believe, into the Incineroar. So getting that sleep off, so influential for that side.
Yeah, getting sleep off, it's one of those ones where it could have gone to either slot, really, and Matt probably thinking Yveltal being asleep, it puts less pressure on the Calyrex, of course, with its Dark Aura and its super powerful Dark-type moves, and possibly even maybe Black Glasses, Life Orb, or something to boost its power. Going into that Calyrex, it's not going to like it, so neutralizing that instead of neutralizing a thing that is really, it could possibly carry Scald if the sets have been changed a little bit, which could be annoying if you burn the Calyrex, but not the end of the world if it is targeted. We do see Yveltal come back in, though, which means, it's kind of done its job of the Incineroar going to sleep, scaring off the Amoonguss, as we do see Amoonguss eventually switching out, and we see a Swords Dance coming out from the Calyrex, which is very good for getting that Intimidate drop back, but the Iron Defenses are just going to keep on coming from the Slowbro, meaning that those Swords Dances are nothing compared to the bulk it's going to have, and when it starts body pressing, it is going to be a threat unless a Wicked Blow can do a lot with that crit damage.
I thought these were Trick Room Pokemon, but it seems like they're setup Pokemon now. Really interesting to see that Swords Dance sort of making sure that you can handle the intimidates that go off on Calyrex. That's really interesting, especially when there's such a high cost to switching in that Incineroar, now that it's asleep and can't really threaten the Calyrex. Slowbro getting off those iron defenses is great, but yes, as you mentioned, that Urshifu is so scary for that to try to be able to handle. Maybe you can take a Wicked Blow, but it's going to be hard to take a whole lot more than that, especially with Dark Aura up and making that do even more damage. So it's going to be interesting to see what Karthik goes for here.
Yeah, Karthik opting to go into what was the Calyrex at +2 with Foul Play, hitting that Amoonguss luckily, who isn't known to be a physical attacker. Slowbro drops to that crit Wicked Blow, so possibly revealing, you know, well, I guess crits do really ignore those defense boosts, but could maybe regularly live that. I'm looking at the boost set that this Urshifu had when it flashed up. It could be a choice band, and I don't know if you saw as well, Hayden, but we saw Beat Up as well, which is normally used for activating Justified. And, you know, but that could be for breaking sashes, and with how powerful this Pokemon can be with the choice band, it could be quite scary if it gets those hits off multiple times.
Yeah, really interesting to see those cool techs that players have for maybe handling Calyrex with that Focus Sash and all kinds of things. I think Choice Band is definitely a very reasonable assumption for Karthik to potentially make going forward, seeing all the damage that just came out, and for us, especially knowing the moveset. But this is going to be really scary for Karthik because you can crit through the Intimidate drops with the Urshifu, and then suddenly Incineroar is not doing very much, but then every time a Veltal stays on the field, it's just giving Dark Aura boost to that Urshifu.
Yeah, and giving Dark Aura boost to the Urshifu is something that we'll have to consider. Amoonguss, you know, will take that Oblivion Ring quite well. The Cobra Berry, I did believe I saw it in the background. You'll see how much this Wicked Blow does. If it is Choice Band and boosted with the Dark Aura, it's going to do a fair chunk. Groudon being physically bulky, it's going to take that quite well, and it's going to activate its Citrus Berry, so a little bit more longevity there for Karthik, but we'll have to keep in mind that that damage will be rolling and rolling and rolling. And then we'll see a Spore go off as Amoonguss does avoid the Precious Plays, means that Spore is more likely guaranteed. Urshifu taking that quite well, possibly opted for a bit of bulk, where it can drop its attack stat with Choice Band. Although going into Veltol, maybe realizing that's the threat that can start foul playing me, and can mean that Calyrex can come in a little bit more safely once the Groudon is also neutralized.
That's such a tough miss with that Precipice Blades. If that had picked up the KO on Amoonguss, then suddenly you're in a much better position. This Urshifu can't protect, you can finish it off with an Oblivion Wing, and you've got that foul play pressure onto the Calyrex, but suddenly Calyrex is around, and most of the Pokemon on Karthik's side are asleep, and so you can just start firing out those Glacial Lances. And so really tough for Karthik to figure out how to come back here. Maybe you're mostly taking notes for how to try to handle this in the future, or hoping to have Pokemon wake up fairly soon.
Yeah, and Karthik doesn't have to hope for that wake up, because both these Pokemon are asleep. Switching an Incineroar to Intimidate off, maybe realizing that it is a choice band, but will it matter with those with that critical hit chance, you know, being to that 100? It's just going to go through those drops or any boosts that happen. Actually, I believe it goes. That's me, you know, forgetting how things work. But we do see Calyrex coming in here, which is going to sit recovery in front with both these sleep Pokemon, even though they have very strong attacks against it. Wicked Blow goes into Incineroar. It does a nice chunk there. And, you know, it's going to mean that Incineroar is going to be on another timer. So Matt really revealing what this Urshifu can do, you know, even though it's with that choice band, when it's quite commonly a Focus Sash or maybe an Assault Vest, just to try and take those hits a bit better.
Yeah, really tough to see how much this Urshifu is doing. It really can't just click the one move, regardless of whatever item it had. Wicked Blow is just so strong into so much of this team with Dark Aura set up, and it's just doing so much damage everywhere. And it's going to be really difficult to slow that down when everything is asleep, and suddenly the Dynamaxes are coming out, and it's going to make things really challenging. And there's a whole lot that Karthik's going to have to change to be able to handle this going forward.
Yeah, Karthik is going to have to really think that through, because, you know, Calyrex coming in with both his Pokemon asleep, and it's also, you know, got rid of all of its attack drops. Had to lose that Sword Stance, but it wasn't really the best time to be Sword Stancing when Incineroar was coming through. And we did just have a bit of confirmation in our chat here that it's actually a Focus Sash in Urshifu. It was just a Dark Aura boost that were making things so much more powerful. The crit without even going for a Wicked Blow, so Matt has a bit of luck on his side as well now. Incineroar dropping to that close combat, which, you know, is quite nice to know that Intimidate is gone. A Max Hailstorm is likely going to knock out or at least do a big chunk to his Veltol, no matter how it is built. And we do see that it's a very offensive Calyrex in front of a fairly fragile Veltol. It does drop and the Hail gets set up. So a timer is set on even more Pokemon, and Matt has that Pokemon has an even more of a Pokemon advantage and is threatening with these Chilling Neigh boosts.
Yeah, this poor little Groudon had half hit points. It's not going to have a really tough time trying to make sure that it can do anything for the rest of the game. Even with the Dynamax, it's just going to be KO'd by that +1 Glacial Lance. It does have a little more hit points than I recalled, but that's still a pretty tough spot. That Citrus Berry might be really helpful going forwards, but definitely going to be a challenge to find a way out of this game, barring some critical hits. I'm really curious to see if Karthik's going to adjust game plans going forwards, or just going to try to play a similar game, but maybe don't lose the Slowbro so quickly and go for those Precipice Blades. Actually hit this time into that Amoonguss might be enough to sort of turn the game around, although we are seeing the forfeit this time around.
Yeah, Karthik can have to maybe think, not to go heavy on a Trick Room denial, because it seems from the lead that he had, he was like, okay, I can just knock out or stall out either of the Trick Room setters and just kind of go from there. If Trick Room went up, Slowbro is very slow and can then start knocking things out with its body presses, but Matt really read into that and was like, okay, I'll start knocking out your one Trick Room counter. And then from there, what was he going to do? Amoonguss could put things to sleep. Yes, it was a bit threatened by some of the strong flying type moves from Yveltal, but Cobra Berry came in useful and stopped that. And, so Matt's got to recognize that as well, how much Cobra Berry damage did. And it's going to be another back and forth of trying to find out what the best game plan is. Maybe we're going to see anti-Trick Room modes, or just maybe Dialga's going to come for a faster mode. Both these players have options for any scenario, really.
I think I'm really curious to see what answers Karthik finds for specifically the Amoonguss, knowing that Cobra Berry is there, as you mentioned, and then also being able to try to find a way to handle that Urshifu, because on paper, it shouldn't be so threatening, or not as threatening as it was, but as soon as you want to use a Veltal, suddenly you're making your opponent stronger, and that's going to be such a tough thing to be able to adjust to, even though a Veltal gets the threat on Urshifu of that Oblivion Wing doing a lot of damage. You still have to be able to time it very well, and Matt did a really good job of leveraging that for his own benefit, and I'm really curious if that'll happen again, or if things will be pretty different this time around.
Let's see if things do change. As you do see Slowbro coming in again, we'd kind of deny that Trick Room if it possibly does get up. Venusaur coming through again with its Sleep Powders can definitely stop that Trick Room if it hits. And we see Incineroar alongside the Calyrex this time. So Incineroar getting Intimidate down. Neither of these Pokemon are really bothered by Intimidate. Body Press goes to the defense stat. And Venusaur is, well, it does Venusaur things as a special attacker. Glacial Lance, instantly very threatening. And, possible Fake Out if it goes onto either of these Pokemon is going to be quite nice for Matt, because Karthik is then losing one of the Pokemon. Could be going really bulky, or could be getting that Sleep Powder off, of course. But to see if they do go for that, I did see a flash of hovering over different moves compared to Fake Out, which, maybe trying to read into a Protect, or read into a Switch, try and stop that. If Matt calls that right, that'll be an amazing play, as Slowbro does switch out, meaning that, something is going to come in and take a Glacial Lance, and this is going to be super effective on both of these Pokemon if the Sleep Powder misses. And, if Karthik really likes their Pokemon, has been giving a little team prep in the back between games, they're going to think, what, we've got to hit, but there's no point of trying to hit a Sleep Powder, actually, because we do see it does go big, and that Vine Lash is going to be absolutely, it's not the scariest, because none of these Pokemon are weak to it, but a Max Quake could be a bit annoying for this Incineroar, or even though getting the Vine Lash down, it's still chip damage turn by turn, which these Pokemon are going to like, given they like a slow, steady game. Max Flare, though, from the Sun, let's see how much that does to the Calyrex. It doesn't drop. I have to see how much Calyrex retaliates with, given the damage it is known for putting out.
Such a wonderful play with getting that Weather Ball off. I was thinking the whole time the Groudon switched in, is it going to go for it? And it did. And that's such amazing damage to get onto that Calyrex. But at such a high cost, getting that Glacial Lance into two Pokemon that are weak to it, even with the Dynamax on Venusaur, is going to be so difficult. And I'm very curious what Matt Ted's going to bring in to try to leverage the situation of pretty much everything on the field is going to be pretty low hit points after this turn. That Venusaur is still going to be in a good position to do a lot of damage going forwards, though, and it's really resting on the shoulders of whatever comes in to be able to use its higher hit points to take an attack from that Venusaur and be able to do a lot of damage and start finishing off KOs, because Calyrex being low HP versus two things that are faster than it at low HP, not the best situation for it to be in.
Yeah, it's not a very good situation for it at all, but we see that the Glacial Lance just misses a knockout. Focus Sash on the Venusaur, so revealing it's not that bulky of a Venusaur. As often, they might be have that bulk to take that hit quite well. Groudon, it lives on a fair amount of HP. We don't see the Berry activate because of Calyrex's ability, which is very important for Matt, because now, with Dialga on the field, Dialga is likely going to be faster than this Groudon, but is it going to be faster than Venusaur is a different question, because if Venusaur can get a nice powerful Max Quake off, if it has the damage rolls, it is a Sash version, not a rifle version. to see whether that will matter or not. If it doesn't, then you can start just going for a max Steel Spike or max Quakes with Dialga, just to get the bulk flowing. And bulk is something you want to have against this team, because the best way to beat defense is to be defensive as well. You know, if you can't be faster and more powerful, you just knock them out. Incineroar comes in and is going to be a nuisance to that. Groudon just got its berry back, and you know, you have to see where it goes from here, because it is going to be a close game. Both Dynamaxes are up, and of course Venusaur is on very low HP.
Yeah, interesting points you brought up about sort of the question of whether Venusaur still has enough damage after, like, the Focus Sash was necessary for it to even be around here, but there is that hidden cost of once you've thrown down the Glacial Lands, either Venusaur is gone or it has a Focus Sash and now it can't threaten your Dialga. And playing defensively is definitely an option. It looks like we're actually seeing that Vine Lash coming off, while Venusaur can still guarantee it before it maybe faints. Sort of using that residual damage to try to make up for the fact that it doesn't have as much offense directly. In the meantime, though, that Max Wormwind for sure going to finish off the Groudon. And it's definitely tough for Karthik to figure out where the damage is going to come from to finish off this Dialga. It has 2 more turns of Dynamax and so much damage that it can do in that time.
Yeah, it's got loads of damage left to do over time in this Dynamax factor. Of course, it has that turn extra in comparison to the Venusaur, which is going to be good. It's not the biggest change in the world, because anything can sneeze on this Venusaur and it's going to go down. Slowbro will come in though, and you know, that's going to be a bit of a bother, because you know, these Pokemon aren't known for having moves that really knock out the Slowbro. And if Slowbro can live, it can start getting those iron defenses off and go for its body presses. Yawn again if it has it. Yeah, iron defense is going to be it's going to be good for the damage presence of that body press, but is it going to be very good for, you know, this Dialga that's sitting on the field as being a special attacker and being as strong as it can be when it gets its damage rolling? It's going to be fairly annoying if, you know, Karthik gets all these moves set up and we just see a crit special move that gets that knockout. Max Guard though will come off from the Venusaur, just keeping itself safe. It wants to preserve that 1 HP for as long as possible. And you know, we'll see how it's read into. Max Wormwind is going into the Slowbro. You can see how much it does. It just misses a knockout. So we see Slowbro might be a bit more physically built, just to try and take hits from some of these Pokemon that are going to be hitting on that physical side. But you know, it's still going to have that slivers of HP to live on. See where it goes from there. Slackoff though is going to get that HP straight back, which means it's going to be an even bigger nuisance to kind of pivot around and see what Incineroar goes for. I do believe it to go for that fake out to try and guarantee the knockout on that Venusaur. So we're back to kind of like a turn 0 sort of pace, where Slowbro's got its HP back. Venusaur is still hanging on with its Focus Sash and is going to be faster likely than both these Pokemon if its speed tiers are set right, given they are both probably slower to fit in with that Trick Room.
Yeah, I really like that play with getting the fake out off into the Dynamax Pokemon. Sure, Dynamax Pokemon can't flinch when they're Dynamax, but they can still faint, and being able to sort of leverage that fake out pressure so that Venusaur didn't get its 3rd move off. If it had gotten a Max Quake off, this Slowbro really would be able to just slack off and keep pace with the Dialga, which would have been incredible. That might have just spelled the end of the game. As it is, with that fake out pressure, this Venusaur is still around, and it has that Sleep Powder pressure, but this Slowbro would still be KO'd by another attack. And yeah, Dialga's just Max Guarding to try to block the Sleep Powder, I think.
Yeah, Max Guarding to stop a Sleep Powder is absolutely great, because you keep it around for a little bit longer. Incineroar is just going to go for that Flare Blitz, just guarantee that Venusaur is gone. Maybe have a safety goal or something. I've seen it in previous games. The useless crit for the knockout there, you know, just to kind of rub it in. Matt rubbing his hands, or shaking his fist, being like, you know, got that nice little knockout that's going to put the game forward. Predicting to protect really well as well on Karthik's side, just getting that iron defense up, you know. Yes, it's no good against his Dialga, but getting them up as soon as possible is absolutely amazing, because, you know, if your Pokemon in the back can sort out this Dialga, then Slowbro can just sit around, and all these physical attackers that are left behind are going to be, you know, easy little bait for it to just take hits from and then knock out of this body press if they aren't overly bulky. But hopefully Matt can read into that. If you see Yveltal comes in, and it's going to be a threat to, not even a threat to either of these Pokemon all too much, because it's not really known for Dialga to be cared about these moves that it can throw out, but it can still do a lot of damage, and maybe has Snarl as well that could cause some issues later down the line.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that Snarl. If the Yveltal has that option, it can make sure that Slowbro survives. It might not still be able to survive the double up from Incineroar and Dialga, but if it can, and if it can slack off back up, this Slowbro is really a threat that can just close out this game. The Yveltal on its own, honestly, quite terrifying if it gets that Snarl off. We know, I suppose, that I'm not sure if Karthik has seen, the Amoonguss in the back means that Yveltal is maybe going to go to sleep, but it definitely isn't threatened from damage by anything except this Dialga. So if it has that Snarl off, if it doesn't take too much from the Flare Blitz, it really does have the potential to close out this game just defensively.
Yeah, and we do see that Snarl coming out, which means there's going to be a bit of time put down onto Matt's side. He has the Pokemon to switch about though, which is very good because you can scare things off. We do see a Roar of Time miss, which is going to be very annoying. Throat Chop going to go into Slowbro, even with that Dark Aura boost from the opposing Yveltal. It's not going to do very much. Body Press, which is now +2, gets a return knockout onto the Incineroar. So Karthik has got a bit of pace going now. Yes, it relied on having that move miss. I think Roar Time, if it had hit, could have really knocked it out and been a bit of a nuisance. But Snarl is just putting the pressure on, so it's getting physical defense boosts for this Calyrex. It's getting those special attack drops for this Amoonguss and this Dialga. Amoonguss not known to be an attacker, but if it carries that Pollen Puff, that is still super effective. And that's going to be something that Karthik will have to kind of think about. As you see though, on our side at least, the Foul Play is the move of choice. So, you know, maybe not going to be overly good into Slowbro, because it could just have minimized special physical attack IVs, and meaning that it might have to rely heavily on that Dark Aura influence, but Slowbro could maybe just keep setting its moves up, keep slacking off, and just, you know, knock it out over time if it has the spread to do so.
Yeah, Roar of Time, just that miss is so influential. We're seeing Matt trying to pull things back with the Rage Powder, but that Snarl coming out again, calling that the Amoonguss wasn't going to go for Spore, or just wanting to get that special attack drop on Dialga and limit its time even if you went to sleep for it. This Dialga is now going to be able to try once more. It can hit this Roar of Time. So this Slowbro is probably going down. But this Yveltal might have done enough work where maybe this Amoonguss is still able to position things properly and get that Spore off so that Calyrex can win. But Karthik's brought this really close, and it's definitely an open question whether that can happen. Oh, and we see the Calyrex doesn't have Protect.
Yeah, Calyrex without Protect is going to be something that, you know, could be read into. Of course, now, unless you try and hope for a Snarl high roll, that's really the only option you can go for to just stop Amoonguss going for Rage Powder and redirecting moves. Maybe the Yveltal can read into that and just go for that attack into the Calyrex. No, it's going to go straight for that Snarl. Will it be enough? It is just enough to get the knockout. Will there be enough time to stall out between Spore and, of course, the Oblivion Wing? Because inevitably there's going to be Oblivion Wing come off, and, you know, Amoonguss, only with the Cobra Berry, won't have time to recover that. And Foul Play isn't going to be doing the most, because, you know, this seems to be a specially orientated Yveltal. And we do see that Matt, you know, just, you know, not calling that turn very well. It's just going to go for that forfeit. You know, it's a shame to have to go out on those terms, but, you know, Karthik just pivoted really well that turn, and having to rely on max sleep turns, it's going to be very annoying for Matt, given that, you know, there's no real move to really hit the Yveltal, and you could have to be relying on a crit there, which, you know, isn't something you'd always be hoping on, especially for the Yveltal at that high HP.
Yeah, Yveltal putting in just so much work here, coming in against 3 Pokemon or 4 Pokemon and being able to take all of them down was incredible. I didn't think the Karthik was going to be able to pull through with that one, but with the miss from Roar of Time and then sort of continuing to distract from that Yveltal just long enough where it put in a lot of work, I think Matt's definitely going to have to think pretty hard about how am I going to handle that Yveltal if I lose too much hit points on my Calyrex, then I can't play defensively with it because it doesn't have Protect, and it's going to be really hard to preserve the tools I need to get that KO. So definitely interested to see if Matt's able to get, maybe you just Spore the Yveltal earlier and that's how you win, but otherwise it's going to be tough to figure out sort of how to time that and how to manage the threats on that side of the field.
Yeah, they have to really keep that in mind. Of course, like, they both have the information to know what went well for them in their games respectively they won, but they both also know, you know, what they can adapt to change where they lost. Of course, you know, neither of them have gone for that Trick Room mode, really, so we could see Matt throw it completely out the window and to set up that Trick Room. Maybe Karthik might fall for that, and we could see the switch up and go for a really speedy mode, thinking, okay, Matt's going to lead with Calyrex plus something, I'll lead with Yveltal plus something fast, maybe even the double Sun mode, just to get, like, sleep powers off fast enough, and they're just to kind of set the pace on their side a lot easier than Matt has. But if Matt just goes straight off that Trick Room, you know, it could outlead Dialga plus Calyrex go Trick Room twice while I'm going to sleep. We'll have to see. Regieleki Yveltal coming in though, so a pretty good call there. of going for that double speed. And then we do have a very Trick Room heavy mode on this side. And unlike Tapu Koko, Electro Train isn't going up straight away and relies on that Dynamax move here from Regieleki. But is it worth it? Because if you're Dynamaxing a Regieleki, you've lost your Dynamax at all of Trick Room if it goes up. And that's going to be really annoying because, you know, it's the fastest Pokemon in the game. And having that as your only Pokemon gone and your Dynamax being ruined, you know, is going to be really ineffective. As you see here, Matt is hovering over the supportive Trick Room mode for this turn 1. And if he goes to that, that could be a great mind game into Karthik, who did go for that speedy mode.
Yeah, you really hit the nail right on the head there. There's so much trade-off that Karthik has to do to try to manage the Amoonguss versus not committing that Dynamax right away. We do see the Slowbro coming in. That might be an angle in, but presumably we're going to see just like a Rage Powder, and Regieleki really would be in a tough situation to Dynamax here. So Trick Room's going up at pretty low cost.
Yeah, Trick Room's going up, and Karthik calling that well, getting that switch into the Slowbro, and getting a switch out again with the Volt Switch. We could see possibly maybe Groudon or Incineroar coming in. Both of them, you know, they like a bit of Trick Room. They're not the fastest Pokemon, but sometimes they are built to be a bit fast. But, you know, yeah, maybe just... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just very impressed with how Karthik is handling this so far. You pivot in exactly what you need for Trick Room, starting with a lead that is completely not, and suddenly Trick Room was baited, and now this Slowbro is actually so happy here. Incineroar can at least slow down Amoonguss for a little bit. But what were you going to say, Connor?
I was just going to say, how Incineroar likes a bit of a slow mode. He likes to dance with those slow Pokemon. As we do see here, you know, that threat straight away of this Incineroar coming in has had to make Matt think a little bit, because, you know, yes, you can Swords Dance, but you can Fake Out. Yes, you can Spore, but again, there's Fake Out. Amoonguss is going to hate taking a Flare Blitz if it comes into it, because, you know, sometimes Incineroar like to, you know, drop a bit of that defense stat because they have Intimidate already, to put a few EVs into attack stat, maybe just enough to knock out the common Amoonguss. And so we're now put into a situation again where, you know, Matt is now also in those mind games of who's getting Fake Outed, is anyone getting Fake Outed, could there be Taunt on this Incineroar, some Incineroar carry Taunt. As Dialga does come in, we do see the Fake Out does come out onto the Dialga, and we'll see what goes there as Trick Room comes off from the Slowbro to reverse that Trick Room straight away. But I think I saw a sneaky little move from the Calyrex there, who does reverse it again instantly. So already we have 3 Pokemon who can click Trick Room, and that's going to be really annoying of everyone having to reverse it, reset it. So players are now on a clock going back and forth like a pendulum of who sets it up, who resets it.
That was such an interesting turn. I can't quite tell who wanted Trick Room to be up and who didn't. If this was like a read to try to like keep Calyrex from being able to reverse it, so that Slowbro and Incineroar are still in good position, or if it was trying to reverse it and then Calyrex read into it and kept it up. It's interesting to see both players sort of really battling around who goes first at what time. I think if that Dialga had gone in and been able to move first, that would have been incredible for Matt. And so I think it's a really good read from that Slowbro, but it does mean that Trick Room's still up and Calyrex can play into it too. So interesting for both players to try to like battle a bit for consensus on what should the speed order be.
Yeah, the speed order, you know, has kind of been set now, and, you know, the players have accepted, you know, that Trick Room is going to be up. As you see, high horsepower going into the Incineroar, not too soon though after that Iron Defense was on the Slowbro, so Slowbro already getting that bulky mode set up, which is looking amazing in front of these Pokemon. If we can see maybe parting shots when that Dialga comes back in, or if this Incineroar itself carries Snarl, just like its Yveltal friend. So it's, you know, going to be the case of Slowbro can sit there happy and fancy and just get those Iron Defenses up, and then smack down with those body presses, just, you know, knocking out his Pokemon. Ice typing a Calyrex, it's not going to like taking that. Incineroar, if it is there, is definitely going to take that. The Dialga, being a Steel type, won't like taking that. And, you know, it's going to be annoying as we do see the Yveltal come in though, so just a little bit of neutering to either Pokemon if it isn't checked soon enough.
Yeah, I think Yveltal putting on so much pressure, but then Amoonguss is finally in position to just start throwing out those spores. And I love the way that Karthik is setting up the Slowbro to try to handle that Calyrex, to try to set itself up and be able to move first in Trick Room, be able to keep the right speed order up as it goes. And it has that slack off, so it's going to be tough to take out. But in the meantime, Matt really is, we've seen the Swords Dance on Calyrex. It's definitely not something you can leave. And this Incineroar is coming in and lowering the attack, which is great, but it's going to go to sleep now, and it's not going to be able to use Fake Out to keep slowing down that Calyrex.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world, you know, like you said, as it going to sleep, but it is a bit of annoying that it's relied to go for that hard switch to get that Intimidate off again instead of getting that parting shot opportunity, which would be essentially 2 intimidates in 1 turn. And so you have to play around that. We do see it, the Calyrex really happily takes that body press, as it does just go for his Swords Dance straight away. It's in a position where it wasn't really threatened. If that Yveltal had stayed in, it would have just got spooled, and even if Incineroar coming in, you're now at the +1 instead of the +2, but that still is a very threatening attack stat. Given the Pokemon it's on, Incineroar won't like taking high horsepower. If you switch and you call it right, the Glacial Lance can do a lot to that Yveltal if it comes in, and Regieleki is pretty fragile. Like, it's just a ball of electricity. It's going to take a hit from nothing, especially if that is another high horsepower. Amoonguss could just start putting Slowbro to sleep as well if it really wants to. So both these players, are in a situation where Trick Room isn't the end, but it's not going to be the overall end. We do see the safety goggles though on the Slowbro. I do believe he's to be a Wakan Berry on the original team, and Body Press just does another little chip damage. Its Glacial Lance comes into the fray here. We'll see how much this does. Incineroar being a fire type will take as well as the water typing of Slowbro, as it fails to knock out both of them. And as this turn, it's just again back to that position where Slowbro can set up nicely. Incineroar can maybe swap out, to try and preserve itself. And Amoonguss knows it can't put this Slowbro to sleep, so it might be forced to switch out on this turn.
I've been wondering this whole game why Karthik was bringing the Slowbro. It really didn't seem to do enough in either of the other games. It just kept going down to things like that Dialga, and seeing that reveal in Game 3 is so huge that it goes from Matt having this very safe, okay, I will just keep clicking Spore and Glacial Lance, I have plenty of turns of Trick Room left, I'm definitely going to win, to this really tough position with the Slowbro in just a spectacular spot, and it can always reset the Trick Room if that goes away and just keep using Body Press. That's incredible as attack.
Yeah, and we see how much that Foul Play does in return with how Body Press and Defense is working with it. It slowly chipped away this Calyrex, as Calyrex can't do much to it with the defense investment it has gained from its moves. Incineroar might not take this as well as it did last turn. Probably going to see it drop, and we're going to see that it's now going to be a nice +1 extra onto that Calyrex, which Slowbro can easily just counteract with another Iron Defense. So, Matt is going to have to kind of read into that as well, thinking, yes, I've got this attack boost, but you can just get another defense boost. We could see maybe a Sucker Punch come from the Yveltal if it does carry it, which, just eliminate one of the Trick Room Pokemon, and Trick Room is ticking, it's coming to an end soon. So with the strongest Trick Room Pokemon gone and one of the setters as well, there's going to have to be that thought, oh, can I get the knockout now? Can I get the ball rolling? And we'll have to, Dialga is then set back a turn where it has to go for that Trick Room.
Yeah, I think timing the Yveltal coming in right at the end of Trick Room is really interesting, but then, yeah, there's the sort of like the flipped angle of, well, either side can use Trick Room or outside of Trick Room. I'm really curious to see what happens here. The Calyrex is very threatened by the Snarl, but there's so much that could happen with just sort of playing into that and going for a Spore. You could even Dynamax the Calyrex if it can survive a Snarl at that point, and Rage Powder. There's so many options on both sides, as there has been every single turn, and it's really such a treat to see sort of how these players are trying to turn a lot of options into a good, strong position, especially with Matt not being able to take down that Slowbro very easily. That's going to be really tough as we get later into the game.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough, and Matt is going to think about that. The Snarl coming out, maybe not having an option, such as the Sucker Punch, to try and guarantee out straight away damage. And, just getting rid of the Calyrex is going to be good. If Dialga to come in there to try and preserve any Trick Room, stability, that'd be a nice start onto it. Slowbro, even though it's not taking very much, going to go straight back up with the Slack Off, meaning that, it's just going to have that full HP. It's going to be even more of a threat to get those boosts up. Yveltal going to take a little nap after Amoonguss hits it with his Spore. So we're in that position again where Matt has the upper hand of, Yveltal being asleep, Yveltal being the biggest pressure, to this team, besides maybe the Groudon if it is there. And Slowbro, with the boosts it has and not really caring about its Intimidate, can just go for a Body Press again onto Incineroar and just guarantee a knockout, if not close enough. And Amoonguss, we see, is being forced to switch out. So Matt really having to pivot around, not be able to set Trick Room up instantaneously, and also being scared of what this Slowbro can do to both of his Pokemon he has left, because Amoonguss is doing nothing to it at this point.
Yeah, I really love that slack off. Just making sure that Dialga can't come in safely and just start firing off max Wormwinds. It wouldn't get that KO on Slowbro, and then it would take a body press in return. And so Matt having to do this adjustment of, okay, well, I guess I'll fake out and then have Dialga, and then with the Dark Aura, maybe I can double target the Slowbro and get rid of it. But Matt's really forced to think so hard about this single non-restricted slot, whereas meantime, Karthik's burning through those sleep turns, and if this Yveltal wakes up on turn 1 and gets a Snarl off, that could put Matt in such a tough position. And so Matt kind of really relying on Amoonguss to put it in work, keep that Yveltal asleep for a little bit longer so that I still have a chance to get rid of the Slowbro.
Yeah, Matt is in a position where he is forced to target that Slowbro, so Karthik has played that very, very well. And if Slowbro keeps living these hits, it can knock out either of these Pokemon. Most likely, it might be inclined more to go towards that Dialga, because, you know, it is the legendary Pokemon. It is something that is going to be dealing a lot of damage out. And you know, with how bulky it can be, especially that Dynamax Strike as well, it might be able to take the lead. We do know Matt also has the option to go for a Max Steel Spike, which, albeit not hitting its Slowbro very well, could be a nice bit of damage into the Yveltal, and could get those defense boosts on both these Pokemon, which will mean that they can take that hit a bit better. Whirlwind coming out, probably just trying to get a max roll on the Slowbro. It does miss the knockout, but I have to see if we did see a double up into it with the Incineroar, because with that gone, that is a threat that is so valuable to Karthik gone that, you know, it's not going to be much going on the field. As Throat Chop goes into it, Slowbro is no more, meaning that, you know, it's going to be waiting for Yveltal to wake up, and whatever else is in the back, which is that Regieleki. And Regieleki, you know, it's not going to like taking any of the moves from this Dialga. And if anything, you go for a Max Quake just to guarantee you got that special defense boost. And Incineroar can just start throwing out Flare Blitz, it can start throwing out Throat Chop to stop any Snarls, and with that boost as well, from the Dark Aura, that's going to be doing a lot of damage, even to this Yveltal.
Yeah, just brilliantly played by Matt to finally be in a situation to get rid of that Slowbro. It's caused so much trouble so far. It had this very laborious way of taking out the Calyrex and stopping it, but being able to use that Dark Aura, you didn't really need it. Just using some amount of damage plus that Max Wormwind to get rid of that Slowbro, and now you're in such a good position, because if sure, Karthik can Dynamax and set up the Yveltal to do a lot of damage, but you have the Amoonguss, which is able to just redirect everything. You've gotten rid of the safety goggles Pokemon. It's going to be so tough for Karthik to find a way out. Although we are seeing the Dynamax. If there's a way out, then it's definitely going to start showing itself this turn.
Yeah, Regieleki is going big, so it's probably going to be opting to, you know, just get damage down onto this Incineroar, probably knock it out, possibly, you know, going to be doubling into the Dialga, trying to get as much damage down as possible. Max Guard, just reading into any Max Quakes going into it, or any Max move for that matter. Just trying to guarantee it's not going to take those hits. Max Guard does take the hit from the Max Quake though, so no other opting choice out for that. Parting Shot into Yveltal, just going to lower its stats, you know. It's not the scariest Pokemon on the field for any of the Pokemon that Matt has left, but it's still nice knowing that its Oblivion Wing is going to be weakened for Amoonguss that's going to come in, and that its Snarls, albeit getting that special attack drop, are doing less and less chips, so you can rely more on a crit, or maybe just another move to do a lot of damage later down the line. As we see, Amoonguss is forced, you know, it's going for those spores. Of course, it is forced to go into that Yveltal in the mind game that, you know, maybe we could see a Max Electric coming out from a Regieleki, stopping any grounded Pokemon from being put to sleep, and also boosting its own electric type moves, which is actually quite nice given this way the field is set.
Yeah, being able to get that Spore off and redirect the electric moves is really powerful. That Regieleki getting the double Max Guard though, so strong. And the Oblivion Wing sort of starting to get rid of that Amoonguss. If we could get a low sleep roll on Karthik, then maybe there's a way out of this to just sort of keep doing damage to this Amoonguss, eventually stop it, having not had to take that Max Quake on Aleki, but it's definitely tough.
Yeah, it's going to be tough seeing how little that the damage roll was from the Oblivion when it came out. That was with the Coma Berry though, and with the -1 special attack. So let's just see how Karthik has to really work around that. Of course, having no switches, you're going to have to rely on, you know, doing that very little damage. Maybe Snarl could be the option just to try and chip away at this Dialga, as I said. And once Dialga's gotten to that low, both these Pokemon can just start hitting their strong attacks. But yeah, as you said, that will rely on those sleep turns, and Amoonguss can quite happily just keep those sleep turns going steady, and even if that Max Lightning goes up, and see how much it does to the Amoonguss though. It could be built to take it, as it does take that very nicely, and Matt again on that upper hand, and can probably start putting pressure onto this Regieleki with those Earth Powers and even Roar of Times once it starts to get smaller and smaller itself.
Yeah, I think being able to weather the storm of that Dynamax and set up Trick Room at just the right time is such a powerful adjustment from Matt for this like end game to sort of try to lock that up. There is still a chance for Yveltal to wake up, but now if it wakes up, it'll be snarling after Dialga attacks, not before. And that's a really crucial change, especially with Amoonguss being able to, it can switch out here to regenerate some of its hit points, but it also could have just started going for Dark Aura boosted foul plays. This Regieleki is under so much threat, and this Amoonguss can just keep regenerating hit points as the Incineroar keeps parting shotting. This duo of Incineroar Amoonguss just so strong, and being able to leverage that and just slowly get that damage with Dialga, you know it has enough to finish out this game. Just really well played from Matt.
Yeah, Matt has put himself in a position where he can just keep on pivoting, whether it be a special attack coming from that Yveltal, or it be a physical attack, it's dropped down, it's neutered. Incineroar can also scare off the Regieleki. You know, it's got some strong moves to go into it. It can parting shot it. It could just make sure it's doing very little damage. Dialga, not really caring. We'll see another protect attempt from the Regieleki, as we do see it does not get it. Fake out into Yveltal, just guaranteeing it doesn't, you know, if it does wake up, it's going to take a little bit more of a nap there. Regieleki just dropping as it always does. That crit might have mattered if it was a bulkier Regieleki, but given the team composition, it might not have been as bulky as expected. We see Yveltal does wake up and, you know, got a bit scared in its sleep there and just flinched for his turn, putting it a bit behind in front of 2D's Pokemon that can do loads of damage to it if they wish.
This poor Yveltal woke up and then just got flinched. I really like Matt being able to cover that and going for that fake out, even though if it had stayed asleep, then you would have sort of just wasted the fake out and the Yveltal would have burned a sleep turn for free. Just going for that, knowing that that's what you really need to lock up that game. Really impressive from Matt, and without that double protect on Alekia, it seems like things are totally sealed up. So congratulations to Matt for finding the way through that really interesting reveal of the safety goggles Slowbro. I think it's easy to get a bit flustered if you lose game 2. It's something I struggle with myself as a player when Matt was in such a strong position, and I really liked him sort of just keeping calm, playing a really good game 3, and locking up that end game, not getting flustered at all, and bringing that first win for Canada, which is so strong against a team as powerful as India. So congratulations to both players for bringing a really tight game, and Matt for staying calm and finding a way through the match.
Yeah, it's always a struggle to, you know, go down in game 1 for Karthik's perspective, go down in game 2 for Matt's perspective after a very good game 1, then game 3 being so neck and neck back and forth. You know, Karthik revealed pretty much everything on the plate there that he could have offered, and that just kind of unsettled Matt a bit because he was forced to go for those Trick Room calls, and he was forced to like trying to pivot around special attack drops, but also trying to pivot around damage. And then as it slowly paced down the late game, Slowbro going down was kind of the final nail in the coffin because you didn't have that bulky Pokemon. And that just kind of gave Matt the option to just hit ham and go as hard as possible onto Karthik's team, giving Canada a very important win towards those money matches later down the line in the upcoming weeks of this format.
Yeah, such a phenomenal boost to the momentum of that particular team. We'll have to see next time if that continues with this next match, or if India's able to bring it back and show that this is really going to be a neck and neck fight to watch all the way through. So definitely make sure to come back and see that in just a moment. In the meantime, we'll be taking a short break to recharge, and then Connor will be rejoining to show that next match.